Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tom Rivera, and we're here this afternoon at the Powell Library at Cal State San Bernardino. We're in the fourth floor of the library, and this afternoon we will be continuing our oral history of South Colton, and our guest this afternoon is Mr. Charles Cervantes. Charlie, do you mind if I call you Charlie?
Yes, please.
Charlie, welcome, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
It's an honor to be here.
Totally appreciate that. And we have your wife Cynthia here with us, and she's going to chime in if she has anything that you have to add to the discussion.
All right.
All right. Now, your grandfather, Jesus Cervantes,
Right.
was one of the few businessmen that we had in South Colton. And tell us, when did he start his store in South Colton? Approximately, when did he start his store?
You know, finding some kind of old paperwork, it seemed like it was like about 1938. And the property where the store was located on was 7th Street in South Colton.
Uh-huh.
And then it moved to its 8th Street location. I don't know. I would suspect maybe about 1940.
So must have been in 1938,
1938 is when it started.
And the location was M and
M and 8th Street or La Cadena.
Yeah, on the northeast corner.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. And I see you have a picture of the store.
Yes, I do.
And what I'd like to do with all the pictures that you have, Charlie, is perhaps you can let us borrow them.
Sure.
And then we can scan them
Sure.
and include them later on into our conversation this afternoon.
Sure, and I'll tell you that it's got my grandfather's store, it's got a delicatessen that my father used to own, and then Brill's store, you know, well known to the community.
Oh, the shoe store,
The shoe
the clothing store.
At their very first location was across from Valley College, and then the second location was right there. It's a property that my grandfather owned, and they were there for a number of years.
And then next to the Brill's, the shoe store was
It's
your house.
Where I lived, yeah, where we lived. Yeah.
Where you lived.
Yeah.
And you know, Colton back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s was quite a busy little area.
Yes, it was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a hub city.
The hub city.
Yeah.
And they call it the hub city because the railroads met there. Santa
Right.
Fe and Southern Pacific. Santa Fe went north and south, and Southern Pacific went east and west. So that's why they call it the hub city.
Yes.
And we were extremely fortunate because also the freeway went through there, Highway 99, from Los Angeles to Palm Springs.
Right.
It was a busy area. Now tell me, tell me about your grandfather. When did he come to Colton?
You know what? It had to be in the 19s, somewhere there. And he met my grandmother here in the United States, and and he worked at the cement plant like a lot of people from South Colton did.
That's a Portland cement plant in Colton?
Yeah, yes.
What years? Do you remember what years?
Oh,
he worked there?
this must have been maybe in the 30s, somewhere in the 30s. And so they started the grocery business. I guess they saw a need for that. The idea came from my grandmother's brother, and I don't know his name, but he had the idea that he gave my grandmother about opening up a grocery store.
Mhm.
And I don't know what her educational background was, but she could read or write. But my grandfather was very limited, Jesus, which would have been my father's father. And so as I was told, she was the one that kind of taught my grandfather to read, to write.
Tell me about your grandmother. Where was she born in Mexico?
She was born, and I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. She was born in Durango.
In Durango?
Yes.
Do you have an idea of where your grandfather came from?
Yeah, I have no idea.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure I heard it, but I just don't remember.
And you said both of them met here in Colton?
They met, yes, they met in the United States. I don't know so much in Colton, but they met in the United States.
And do you know when they got married?
They, that would have been somewhere in the early 30s.
In the early 30s?
Yes.
And your grandfather worked for Portland Cement?
Yes.
And then your grandma said, look, we have to open up a store.
Yes. It was kind of her idea. I didn't know this till later on in my life. I said, oh. And so they went from 7th Street to 298 South 8th Street, or La Cadena, as it's known now. And it was a thriving store. It they had a, which I thought was a huge truck, maybe a 2-ton truck. They used to go into Los Angeles and buy wholesale groceries, and they would go on a weekly basis, I think it was. And this is when those little stores flourished. And so they had a pretty diverse population that used to come in. And my grandfather's brothers worked there.
Well,
And,
so it was kind of a family business then?
Yes, it was a family business.
And your grandfather's brothers, how many brothers did he work at the store?
He had Donato, Pilo, as he was called.
Donato, and then the second one was?
Pilo. And then that was it. Then his other brother, Carmen, worked at the cement plant. And they had a sister, Shirley. She didn't work the store.
Okay. And when they opened the store, were just the brothers working at the store, or did your dad and your uncle work at the store?
They all worked the store. And then the World War II broke out. So everyone was drafted somewhere in 1942, 1943.
Yeah. So tell me about your dad and your uncles. You had, your dad's name was Carlos?
Carlos, yes. Yes.
When was he born?
Carlos, your dad was born in 1918. So your grandparents were married in 1916 or 1917. You said the 30s.
Okay. I was thinking about my. Okay,
So,
thank you.
Frank, in correction, the grandparents were married in 1916, and Charlie's father was born in 1918.
1918.
1918.
Okay, thank you.
And then your father, and then he had two brothers. Who were the brothers?
Well, my father was the oldest.
Okay.
And then there was my Uncle Tony, and then
Okay.
my Uncle Ralph was kind of the baby of the family.
Okay.
Father was drafted into the Army Air Corps, and he had met my mother in the grocery store. My mother grew up in High Grove, which was Riverside County, just on the very lip of Riverside County. So they were married.
How did your mom from High Grove, they came to shop groceries at your grandfather's store?
Right.
And your mom and your father saw each other?
Right.
And that was it?
Yes, and my mother's father was very strict. They had to kind of do it on the slide here. Meeting, those were the years, right? And so they were married in 1943, May 16th, and then I was born July of 44.
Okay.
And he was stationed here in the area. They used to have a lot of military bases in the area, Redlands, and I forget what other city.
And where did he work?
He worked, he worked the store, and then after he got out of the military, he worked the store again, and then he opened up a delicatessen, Mexican restaurant.
Oh, next to the store?
Next to the store, yes.
Okay.
So he ran that for just a number of years. And then you either grow or you get overwhelmed by other restaurants. So he closed down the restaurant, and he worked at a liquor store there in South Colton, Dolphy's, I think. I mean, it was there for forever in South Colton. Then from there, he went to Kaiser Steel in 1959 till he retired somewhere around 1983, 84.
Well, I do remember your dad working at the store, your grandfather's store, and I must have been about a 4th or 5th grader. Okay, Charlie?
Okay.
And my parents used to shop at your store, and your father buttonholed me and said, would you like to sell magazines and newspapers for me? And we had them here at the store. You grab your bike, he said, and you go around the neighborhood and sell the newspapers and magazines, and I'll give you a percentage of what you sell. So I did that for your dad when I was a fourth or fifth grader.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. Now tell me, was it hard to get the store going? You know,
You know, I would, I would imagine, it had to be kind of pretty labor intensive at the very beginning.
yeah.
Just to set everything up. But I never saw that kind of hard, hard work. I just saw the grocery store just flourish. It was kind of one of the hubs in South Colton. It was right there in the main drag. And there was just a lot of traffic, a lot
And
of
then,
people.
I guess your grandfather knew what the products
Yes.
he could sell at the store that would be popular with the residents.
Oh, yeah, with kind of the local, population. And I remember vividly Christmas, because they used to have Christmas trees out in front of the store, 20 or 30 of them, and people would, shop for their Christmas trees and, walk away with them. And as a child, this store was huge, but as I grew as an adult, I go, gee, this was a small place.
Well, you know what, you had a carniceria in the store.
Yeah.
You had a carniceria.
Yeah.
You sold carne molida hamburger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you sold also, I remember buying bologna there in the store, and also the weenies.
Yeah.
And you had some steaks.
Yes, yeah, it was kind of full service here with just a
Yeah,
lot of different
pork
types of
chops
beef.
and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
full service.
Yeah.
And how about vegetables? Did you sell vegetables there?
Oh, yeah, they had everything.
Uh-huh.
They had everything. As a matter of fact, they were, they had a cross-section of just a lot of different, racial groups that used to kind of shop there.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't, then Stater Brothers kind of came on the scene around, I think, the middle 50s, but for the first 2 years, my grandfather's store kind of outsold Stater Brothers.
You're kidding.
No, for the first 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, Stater Brothers took off.
Right.
But, yeah, my father told me that,
Excellent, very, very good. That was a popular place. Now, Charlie, what made it popular? Because you have businesses that open and businesses that flourish and some that don't. What made it? What made the store popular?
There was like an episode from a few decades ago, Cheers,
Mhm.
kind of where everybody knew your name. It was kind of like that, only in a grocery store type. I mean, everybody knew everybody's name, kids, notes to the store, give me a pound of bologna, I'll pay you later, or put it in the account. And it was a real extension of people's families. Sometimes people wouldn't even shop, they'd come in here just to say hello. And it was like a grocery store community center. And my uncles, my father, they were very friendly with everybody. If I could kind of bring in Father Valencia, one of the icons of South Colton.
Right.
And there used to be a lot of they were called back then hobos that used to kind of get off the train there.
That's right. We had the train was close by.
Yeah.
And they would get off there.
And they would get off there because
and
they
then
knew
maybe,
Father.
maybe transferred north or south because both railroads were there.
That wherever they were headed. So
Right.
they knew Father Valencia. Father Valencia had a reputation of helping feed these folks, because Father Valencia would go to my grandfather's store about once a week or as needed, with about 20 or 30 men in tow, and to my grandfather's store. My grandfather would feed everybody, sandwiches and whatever they needed to kind of sustain themselves. And this happened on a regular basis, and I think that was kind of the first time that I saw kind of taking care of that fellow man, my grandfather.
So it was service, direct service.
It was
to
direct service, and you have a reputation that kind of is out there.
And friendliness.
Friendliness, yes.
And then the products that people needed were there.
Yes, and then there was credit. People had
Tell me
credit.
about credit. I know what it is, but
Yeah, right.
People would go there and buy products.
They would buy, yes, they would buy products. They had a little box where they had your name and I don't even know if you had a credit limit or not. But if people would come in, they didn't have, payday was maybe too far away, so they would put your name and the amount, give you a receipt, and we'd hang on to a receipt. And then came payday, you would pay. When the store closed around 56 or so, or 55, somewhere in that area, I remember my grandfather took me around to collect some old bills. Unfortunately, he was not very successful. Kind of people's memory kind of disappears that they owe something. So,
that was one of my questions on my
Yeah.
list here. Did people pay
yeah,
regularly?
They paid regularly. When the store was open, they paid regularly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was
So
never.
payday on Fridays, they would come
Yeah,
down and
yeah.
take care of their
Yeah.
bill.
There was never those issues that I can recall when I was
Uh-huh.
kind of in and out of the store. But once the store closed, people's minds got fuzzy as far as what they owed. So,
And you said the store closed about maybe in the 50s,
Yeah,
55,
it-
56?
yes, in about 55, 56, somewhere
Uh-huh.
around there.
Yeah.
And, by this time, my father had kind of, had the restaurant going. Uncle Tony was working for I think for the state. And Uncle Ralph was working, Mako or whatever that construction company
Mako,
was.
M-A-C-C-O,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay,
It
Mako,
was
yeah.
located in South Colton.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the kind of the sons kind of drifted after the war, and but my grandfather's brother still worked there for a while. Everybody aged out, so.
I was going to ask you, you said Father Valencia would bring the hobos
Yeah.
to your grandfather's store,
Mhm.
your grandfather would provide food for them.
Right.
Did your grandfather participate in Las Fiestas Patrias?
Yes, we did. And one year we had a float. At least one year that I can remember. I
Okay.
remember we were up there, little tables,
Yeah.
moving around. Yeah, he participated in events.
So Fiestas Patrias, there was a parade then.
Oh yeah, that was a big time parade. Yeah.
So it was
And,
big doings for the Fiestas Patrias.
It was big.
Uh-huh.
Whatever they have now, it's very small scale.
Uh-huh.
But back then, it's like South Colton closed down.
Did it?
For these events.
Okay.
And then
Did they close down the 8th Street La Cadena?
Oh yeah. They had to. And like I said, at least one year we had because they had a truck, to deal with the grocery delivery and whatever. So they made it a float, and so we were in the float along with some of my cousins.
And then the float paraded down 8th La Cadena?
Yeah.
And where did the parade start? Do you remember?
Yeah, there's I don't know where it started, but it ended with, I think there's a 7-Eleven right there.
Yes, on
Yeah.
N and La Cadena?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was right there as you're going south. It's on the right-hand side.
Right.
It's
And-
the site of the original Garfield School, and then later it was a Circle K Market.
Yeah.
But in between the Garfield and the Circle K, it was used as the place where the fiestas were celebrated.
Yeah, and I should add, that's where my friends and I, a number of families, used to play baseball there in that lot for 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years, hotter than heck, but we were out there playing baseball in August and September.
So that's where the fiesta. Why did it end there? Was it because the what do you call it? That was a place where they had all the activities.
Yeah, just and there were different activities there. They used to have small carnival type groups would come through there.
And the stage for the queen.
Stage for the
princess.
queen. So it was it was an area that the community used for just different diverse events
And
during,
did they
during the
have
50s.
in the parade? Did they have bands and marching groups?
Yes, it was just kind of your regular type of parade, festivities, Boy Scouts marching. I mean, no one ever got told no.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Everybody was in the parade, yeah.
So that was Troop 45 that did the marching then.
Yeah,
The Boy
yeah,
Scouts.
yes,
Troop 45.
yes. I mean, it was just, I mean, everybody looked forward, it was big.
Uh-huh.
It was just big, you know, if you're
Uh-huh.
gonna be out of town, you cancel your plans, because you needed to be there.
And Carlos, did they, what did they call you, Carlos? Charlie?
Charlie,
And did they close one of the streets next to, in street, next to the, where they had the Fiestas Patrias for the dance?
oh, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, I didn't know how they did all this planning, but it's like, you know, South Colton like took over,
Uh-huh.
took over that weekend or those days. And there was a lot of, you know, cooperation from city officials and law enforcement, and it was just a very fastidious time.
Yeah.
And we used to have those eggs,
Cascarones?
cascarones, yes, big difference. It's all year long you eat cascarones, you know, you save the shell and then put confetti in there, and then you break it and people say. So there was a lot of that going on. We had a great time.
Yeah, and for how long did the Fiestas Patrias go on? That was September 15 and 16, 2 days?
Yeah. You know, it started to kind of die out, I think about the late, where it got scaled down.
Uh-huh.
Got scaled down, probably the late 50s, I think.
And that was
Early
in,
60s.
yeah, and that was in for 2 days celebration of
Yeah,
the Mexican independence from
right,
Spain.
right.
Is
yeah.
that what it is, Frank?
Yeah,
Mexican independence from
yeah.
Spain?
El grito,
Yeah.
el grito, yeah,
And then this Independence Day, the
Yeah.
60.
yeah.
And let me see, let me go back to my questions here. You mentioned that besides the Fiestas Patrias, Charlie,
Mhm.
was he involved in any other community activities? Did we have a chamber of commerce back then?
There was,
Or any organizations like that?
My grandfather, I don't recall if he did, but my father belonged to the Exchange Club in Colton, a business organization. So he was in it for a number of years. They used to have and this was a club that was on the north side
Uh-huh.
of Colton. And I remember they had Christmas parties for dads and sons, and I must have been about maybe 5 or 6, and for about 2 or 3 years running, you know, there was always a Christmas party. And I remember being taken to this event, my father's club that he
Uh-huh,
belonged
uh-huh,
to.
uh-huh.
So he did, called the Exchange Club. My grandfather, per se, you know, didn't, he was too busy working 12, 18 hours a day.
I was going to ask you, what were the store hours?
He worked, I remember a couple of times I said, I want to get up with you and be at the store, and my God, it was dark when he opened the store. I mean, it had to be like about 5 or 5:30. I mean, the
Uh-huh.
doors were open, there wasn't anybody out there, but he had the store wide open. As he scaled back a little bit in the sixth, no, I'm sorry, about the latter part of the 50s, because he used to go to a church in San Bernardino, Our Lady of Guadalupe,
Mhm.
because they had a 5:30 mass, 5:30 a.m.
Mhm.
So my dad used to go, I used to get up and go with him, and my grandfather would go, so he could go to church and then come back and open up the store as soon as possible.
Oh, so they were quite religious then?
Yes, with,
Because the church in San Bernardino must have been, what, half an hour away?
yes, it was Monsignor Nunez,
Mm-hmm.
and the church, not the one that's currently, well, actually, I think it's the one that's currently there, where they used to attend. And, yeah, he was, you know, he wasn't a show-off, but he did go to church on a
Mhm.
weekly basis,
Mhm.
as did my grandmother.
Yeah. You mentioned that your grandfather worked long hours.
Yes,
Did he take any time off on Saturdays and Sundays?
finally he did, but in those years,
He was always working?
He was always working.
Uh-huh.
In kind of later years when he owned the store, in the beginning, I think, of the 50s, he used to take me to I think it was called the Temple Theater in San Bernardino. And they knocked it down. It was next to a restaurant called the Rice Bowl.
Oh, yes, I remember, yeah, I
Remember that?
remember that.
So he used to so on Sundays, I think they used to kind of force him to take the afternoon off. And so he used to take me to the movies on a Sunday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the only time that I can recall that he ever took any time off.
Now, where did your grandfather live? Did he live just next to on M Street, next to the store?
There were apartments over the store.
Okay.
So they lived in one of the apartments, and then they had three other apartments that they rented out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they lived up
Up
the
up
apart-
over the store.
Okay.
Mhm.
I thought they had a house next to the store on M Street. Was that your uncle?
That was, the house was my father's. Yeah, that's where I grew up at.
Uh-huh.
So there was, if I can make reference to the picture here,
Mhm.
there was a grocery store, there was a delicatessen, there was a Brill's, and then next to Brill's was the White House, and that's where I grew up.
Yeah. Oh, what about on the other side of the store, Charlie?
On the other side, that was towards, it'd be towards the back of the store. That's where my grandfather's brother lived,
okay.
Carmen Cervantes.
Okay,
Yeah, that's where he
okay. I
lived.
was confusing your
Yeah.
Carmen with your grandfather.
Yeah, no. Grandfather lived above the store, and his brother lived behind.
Did they always live above the store?
Yes, yes. They had a nice. Again, to me, was such a big place, and then as an adult, you go in and go, wow.
Well, they had a balcony that they could watch the parade
Oh,
from
well,
there.
that's, yeah, we used to have friends up there. My wife Cynthia was up there enjoying the parade. I mean, it was, we had everybody.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we had the best view in South Colton.
About your grandmother's patio and the parties in the patio.
Oh, well, actually, my mother, my parents, my father and my mother, liked to have just a lot of parties. They had a patio put in, and they used to have just a lot of folks. As we can show this photo later. A lot of people there sitting around.
Now, where was this?
This was at our house.
At your house?
At our house, in
Okay.
the backyard.
Okay.
And there was a special patio that was put in, special, bar and a barbecue. And one of the things that got left behind was my little handprints. When they put in the barbecue in there, they've got my 4 or 5-year-old handprints in the barbecue. So, I think as we kind of, before we sold the house, I think I took a photo.
Well, it seems that the Cervantes owned that corner, the whole
Well,
corner.
We did.
You did, you
Yeah.
did. And you said you were born and raised there?
I was born in Riverside,
Okay.
and I was raised in South Colton.
Uh-huh.
I was on my father's side of the family. There were 3 brothers. On my mother's side of the family, there were 5 brothers. So, in retrospect, I'm glad they kept me. Another boy. We wanted a girl. But it was always just South Colton was just. I always felt safe.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And the family on both sides was just beautiful, and
So it was very secure.
it was very, very secure.
The neighborhood was secure. The
Yes.
family was provided a good secure system.
Yes, they worked hard. My parents sacrificed a lot for us, sending us to private school.
Where did you go to private school?
I went to Immaculate Conception.
Well, just north of.
Right, and I should add that St. Bernardine's had a great school back then. And I started kindergarten at Wilson School, and at home, everybody just spoke Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And so here I start first grade, and at St. Bernardine's,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was the only Mexicano in the whole school back then.
Yeah.
And I didn't speak English,
Uh-huh.
and guess what? I failed. So from there, I was thinking, what was my mother thinking? I can't understand the language. So then I went to
What grade was that, Carlos?
that was first grade.
First
Yeah,
grade?
first grade.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was in San Bernardino again. And at this time I passed. It was they're kind of bilingual there. And then they opened up a school in Colton, Immaculate Conception. So I started going there second grade.
Uh-huh.
And I graduated from there in 1959. And then there was the Boys High School Aquinas, and maybe I mentioned it before, there were three priests, Salesian priests that served with honor. And so we had that family characteristic, let's say. So I went to the Boys High School Aquinas. First year, it was just boys back then. It was very strict, and I didn't want to go back. My father said, "You're going back." Okay. So, you didn't argue. You said, "Okay."
Yeah. And then after Aquinas, you went to Cal Poly?
After Aquinas, I went to Valley College.
Okay.
And I went to Valley College, and I was just kind of totally, I wasn't the best of students, of a student back then, and I just didn't know what I was going to do at Valley. And I ended up going one semester, then I ended up going another semester, then I flunked out of Valley College. So at that point in time, I went in the Navy, and I worked for one of my uncles who owned an electrical wholesale house in Montclair. And he had married into the Luna family, my mother's side of the family. So I used to kind of drive a truck delivering construction materials to different sites in Orange County. So after that job, after I left that job to go in the Navy, and as you well know, in the 60s, the war was heating up in Vietnam. And kind of going back a little ways, there used to be a movie theater in Colton, the new Colton Theater.
Colton Theater.
Yeah. So I used to go with my cousins to the matinees, and all these terrific movies, Lewis and Martin, Abbott and Costello, and then one matinee I saw this movie, Men of the Fighting Lady. It was about an aircraft carrier with Walter Pidgeon and Van Johnson, and I go, wow, this shiny ship and all these planes, and well, little did I realize that 10 years later I'd get assigned to that ship when I was in the Navy. So I met the ship in the Philippines after doing boot camp in San Diego, and I looked at turned around, or it took us on the bus because the ship had been out at sea, and I waited in the Philippines for the ship to come in. And my first glimpse of the ship was, that doesn't look like the one I saw in the movie. It doesn't shine as much.
So you didn't see Van Johnson on the ship?
Yeah, and I didn't see Van Johnson. I'm thinking, this is a war ship. It's not supposed to sparkle. So,
yeah, let me get back to your grandfather.
Sure.
Your grandfather was not ostentatious.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't spend money that I saw.
No.
He didn't have a fancy car.
No.
He didn't have a fancy house.
No.
He was just a very frugal person.
Yes.
And but he was a very giving person in terms of providing food and providing service, and also being a good grandfather.
Yes.
Did he save his money, or did he invested his money?
He saved his money, and I think that's one of the characteristics that I picked up from him.
Mm-hmm.
My father should have picked up a little bit of stuff from it, but I picked up, I think, a lot of the characteristics from him as far as saving, working
Uh-huh.
hard, and he was not a fancy guy.
No.
And I've heard stories from the grandchildren of people who used to shop there and I didn't know this, I'm at a New Year's party and somebody knows who I am, and they start talking about my grandfather, they always talking about grandfather, that he used to not only have credit for people, if somebody needed a kind of a loan for an important thing, that he would loan, he said probably no interest, just pay me back.
Mhm.
And he would loan people as they needed for a, for not for a want, but for a need
Mhm.
in their particular family. And I knew, it sounds like him, but I never knew that he was like maybe a local bank, I guess.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it was to a great extent, but people knew
If they were in need, they
if
could
they were in
go-
need,
Mhm.
yeah. And like I said, there was no frills. My grandmother, she liked to shop. So whatever my grandfather was saving, my dear beloved grandmother loved to shop.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
she used to go into Los Angeles with my mother and go to Macy's, Clifton's Cafeteria in LA.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And she was kind of the shopper. So
Yeah, but I remember your grandpa, on many occasions, he would kind of say hello to us and then give us a little piece of candy.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember
No,
he doing
he
that.
was just a very very happy,
Uh-huh,
just joyous type.
uh-huh.
Man, even when he was ill, the last kind of year of his life,
Uh-huh.
he just. I remember the priest who did the eulogy said, he was always smiling.
Yeah.
He always had a positive disposition.
Uh-huh.
So,
Did he get together with other business people in the community?
he seemed to know a lot about his competitors,
Uh-huh.
because there were a lot of grocery stores.
Well, Rodriguez was just on the
Rodriguez.
block from you.
And then there was Martinez. They had a bakery.
Another
on
block.
7th
west
Street, I
of-
think
yeah,
it was.
Right.
And there was one other company. Or
La Tiendita there next to the park in South Colton.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Navarro. had a
Navarro,
grocery
yeah. And there was never any, he never had any harsh words for anybody.
store. Uh-huh.
And he knew these folks really well, from some of the events,
Yeah.
from South Colton.
Uh-huh.
But he never, well, I gotta go to a meeting, and then, he was just there at the store. So,
Okay. And you mentioned, Charlie, that your dad was in the service
Yeah.
and your Uncle Tony was in the service.
Yes.
And your Uncle Ralph was in the service.
Yes.
Now, during that period, up until '53, when they were Brown versus the Board of Education,
Sure.
integrate the schools in
Sure.
Colton, prior to that, South Colton was a segregated community.
Right.
And then they, in '53, they combined Wilson Junior High School with Roosevelt Junior High School, and it became Colton Junior High School. They integrated the communities, and that's when the community started getting together. When your dad and your uncles came back from fighting World War II, did they get involved in activities like voting, running for office, buying property in North Colton, where we were prohibited from buying
Right.
property in Colton, North Colton? I remember your Uncle Ralph wanted to buy a house in North Colton.
Yes.
And he was refused, he was denied
Right.
from buying that house. So what impact did the war have on South Colton?
Just kind of moving back to my dad, and then I'll talk about my Uncle Ralph. My father ran for office in 1950, and progressive leadership, native son of Colton, for community progress, and you've seen this, can show it later. So he was involved to be a city councilman, and I remember as a kid. Well, I don't know this, I'm about 6 years old, but stories that I've heard from people that are now adults or my age, and they remember this, and they've been told that South Colton, our own folks didn't even support my father.
Mhm.
You're being too much of a gringo.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, he didn't come close to winning anything. But there was that, which has changed, but there was that feeling among, our folks back in the 40s or 50s that you had a certain boundary, I guess, and you couldn't be, you couldn't run for political office because you
Mhm.
weren't going to get supported even by your own group,
Mhm.
regardless of your progressive ideas.
Mhm.
So, and of course, I didn't know any of this, but in later life, I was told that, I never solicit information, but
Mhm.
people just kind of tell me how things work.
Yeah.
Back then. At the same time, my Uncle Ralph was trying to buy a house, and I think his kids still own it. And I don't know all the details, other than it took a lot. He just wasn't wanted in the community, and
And the house was located
it was in North
across the
Fulton.
street of the junior high school.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly,
okay,
exactly.
okay.
And they just didn't want him in the neighborhood. And again, I'm just a child. I don't know all the back and forth that kind of went on, other than it was not, he was not wanted. His group, his racial group was not wanted in the
Mhm.
north side.
Mhm.
And I never felt the sting of that when I was, when I was growing up. If it was there, maybe it went over my head.
Well, but for him, it must have been a very trying, stressful type of experience.
It was more so because he was wounded. He was a Purple Heart veteran,
Mhm.
and it was I'd have to say it's one of the things that ruined his life.
Mhm.
Being shot during World War II, and he was able to work, and later went on disability.
Mhm.
But it was such an injury that he always, had to be careful, needed medical care. So to have been in World War II, infantry, Purple Heart recipient, and then to have this happen, that he couldn't live on the north side, it had to be a double whammy,
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I can only imagine how it was.
Mhm.
And
But your Uncle Ralph was the fighter.
oh my God, yeah,
He was a fighter.
yeah,
He never gave up the battle.
yeah, no. I've had a lot of people in my life that supported me to go to be a college graduate. My parents, I've got uncles on my mother's side, but it was my Uncle Ralph who was always there. He was.
Yes, he was. Yes.
All right, I'll go to college. And but he was always there. He was there.
How long did the battle last? Because he finally bought the house.
Yes, he finally bought the house. I don't know what the timeline was, but it wasn't a short situation.
Uh-huh.
I think it was long.
Uh-huh.
Where was the house located?
I'm
You said
trying.
across from the junior high.
Cindy, do you remember the
On
address?
Laurel or
The street?
On
Valencia?
South.
Valencia or Oak?
No.
Over by, is it Grand Terrace or Terrace Road or something like that?
Terrace Avenue.
Yeah, Terrace Avenue. On Terrace
Okay,
Avenue.
so it's
Is
just
it?
south,
Yeah.
it's south of Oak, which is the southern boundary of the school.
What is it?
Bonita,
Yeah, I think it's Bonita.
Bonita.
Is there a Bonita there? Yeah.
Bonita.
Bonita.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a corner house, wasn't it, Cynthia? It was a corner house.
It was a corner house, and it was a second house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your uncle was tenacious.
Oh my God. Yes. I he was.
I remember him going through that ordeal, and he said, "I'm not giving up the fight."
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I won the privilege by going to service and serving my country.
Yes.
And there's no reason for people to treat me like this.
Yeah,
Like a
yeah.
second-class citizen.
Yeah. Yeah, I have his card from his obituary, and a man of great character, whose judgment, humor, and friendly spirit brought out the finest in those around him. And he had a sense of humor that were out of this world.
Yeah.
And I picked up some of his characteristics, I think, in my life of well, I won't say quick wit, but of his wit. And he made me, even though, his life was very challenging at times.
And he was smart and he was articulate.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. He could, he could lead you into a swamp and say, "We'll be safe." I mean, no.
But he was one of the first pioneers that led the charge.
Yeah.
He was the first one that led the charge to buy property in
Yeah.
North Colton.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
I'm sure he kind of set the groundwork.
Hmm.
As far as what the law was, and being it isn't kind of owe it to me, but I've sacrificed a lot
Uh-huh.
for this country.
Yes.
And all I want is a house.
Right.
Over here.
Right.
So nothing more.
A house of my choosing,
Yes.
where I
yes.
can bring my wife and my family.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's a simple request.
Yeah. And getting back to Colton being a safe community, we were very lucky in Colton, in particular South Colton, because the Portland Cement gave our grandfathers and our fathers jobs.
Yeah.
So for the cement plant.
Yeah.
So there was a stable population that
Yes.
worked there. Secondly, the PFE, the
Yes.
railroad. The
Yes.
railroad provided jobs for our grandparents and parents during the 30s and 40s and
Yes.
50s. And then we had the citrus. The citrus industry
Mhm.
provided lots of jobs for
Mhm.
our people too, because we had two crops. We had the Valencia crop and we had the navel crop.
Mhm.
When we were through with the Valencia crop, and the navel crop kicked in. And that was the agriculture, of course. So that gave us a stable community to help not only your grandfather's grocery store thrive,
Mhm.
but also the other stores that we mentioned.
Mhm.
So it was a very, very stable community.
Oh yeah.
And then you mentioned your dad worked at the PFE also.
No, it was my uncle.
Your uncle?
My uncle Tony.
Tony?
And he used to have a bicycle, so I mean it was like about a mile and a half or so.
Uh-huh.
And I remember him all these cars exiting and him on his bicycle coming back. I don't know how long he worked, but in later life after he got married, he was and I think this was the state government. He used to work out of Camp Pendleton, and he used to paint the barracks.
Okay.
And he lived in San Bernardino, and he would meet somebody in the city of Paris, and then carpool in to Camp Pendleton.
Ooh, that's a long drive.
He did that for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that your grandfather retired in 54, 55,
Yes.
56.
Yes.
Did he sell the store, or did one of your uncles take it over, or anybody in the family take it over?
He kept the property,
Okay.
and I remember, and I mean I was always kind of running in and out of the store, and I remember the day, the moment that one of my friends said, "Gee, your grandfather's store isn't that doesn't have as big a stock on the shelves as it used to."
Uh-huh.
Well, I hadn't noticed that.
Uh-huh.
That's when the store was kind of slowing down as far as business. And then I began to notice, suddenly instead of 20 cans of stewed tomatoes, now we're gonna have maybe 10,
Uh-huh.
and it was a real, I wish he hadn't said that,
Uh-huh.
I wish the reality hadn't recognized that, the store wasn't as busy as it used to be. And, things that you remember in
Uh-huh,
life.
uh-huh.
So,
What led to that, Charlie? I mean, was
I-
it people being able to shop in North Colton, or was it people had transportation that they could go other places, or was it store ownership? That
You know
your
what?
grandfather was not there anymore?
yeah, I think it was just kind of the changing of kind of the north side. It kind of opened up a little more for everybody. And I think instead of you always, having to work at the cement plant or or a job that was kind of menial, let's say, um, people started to kind of expand. And it wasn't just my grandfather's store, it's kind of the other stores also.
Okay.
It saw saw a decline, and of course
Mhm.
Stater Brothers was, gangbusters, and I think it was kind of a change of the demographic. It was gonna happen one way, or another. He could have been there, my grandfather, every day, but things were just
It became a
changing
different
society.
Colton. It became a different Colton.
It became a different Colton,
Yeah.
and it's still, he owned, we owned the property up until about maybe 8 years or so ago, and after he retired, it was given. Somebody else leased it, and then he had it for a few years, and then somebody else leased it again, and then finally it got leased out to another family, the Valadez family, around 1957 or so, 58. So.
And you said you sold the property about 8 years
Sold
ago?
the property about, Cindy, about 8 years ago, or
10 years ago.
maybe about 10 years or so
Mhm.
ago. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, it's kind of bittersweet,
Mhm.
just to sell the property,
Yeah.
and you've been in the family for such a long time. And I still drive by there. I was there just a couple of weeks or so ago. My dentist is in Colton still. And so I said, well, I think I'll stop by the store, pass by the store, and just around the neighborhood, just to see, how things have changed or remained the same.
Tell me about the most impressionable, wonderful moment that you had while you were there in the corner of La Cadena and in M Street.
Oh my gosh. I think I have to say it was December. Like I said, it was festive. There was Christmas trees out in front of the store, and there was a new life, as in many communities, a new life that occurred. And everybody was always kind of upbeat usually when they came into the store, but it was such a pleasant time of the year anyway, for most people. But I can still see those Christmas trees kind of out there, and then of course the fiestas that we used to have taken to September.
Uh-huh.
So that was also a lot of fun right there. Just kind of the excitement, and my father getting ready for this and that, and so those would be two of the highlights.
Oh, very
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Now tell me, Charlie, your dad Carlos and your mom Mary.
Yeah.
They had how many children?
There were three of us. Yeah,
Mary
I'm
was
the oldest.
Irene is the first.
No, I'm the first.
You're the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I kid that she's the first, but I'm the first.
Okay. It's you, Irene, and.
And Mary.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and we were all raised in South Colton. Irene lives in Highland, and Mary lives in Redlands, and I live in Redlands.
So they're close by.
Yes.
And you live in Redlands also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you graduated from Cal Poly Pomona?
Cal Poly Pomona, yes.
And after you graduated from Cal Poly Pomona, you worked for the County of San Bernardino?
Right.
Tell me what you did at the County of San Bernardino.
I started in 1974, and I started working for the probation department, juvenile hall.
In juvenile hall, who did you meet in juvenile hall?
Well, I met a lot of people. I met my wife.
You met your wife at juvenile hall?
Yes.
Was she doing time there?
Yeah, she was. Yeah. Yeah, she burned the potatoes, so they gave her 3 months. No, she.
So how long did you work for the county?
I worked 30 years. I worked juvenile hall for about 5 years. And I met my wife about the second year. She was a part-timer. And so from there, I went to the public health department, working with adolescents again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there from 79, public health department, 79 to 87. And then from 87 to about 94, I went with children's services. I was a child abuse investigator for about 5 years. And then the last 10 years of my career with the county, I used to train and recruit foster and adoptive parents and set up big events. Cal State, I used to organize and plan a picnic, appreciation picnic for foster parents, 500 foster parents and kids out here on campus on a Sunday. And simultaneous to working for the county, I started the school that had thrown me on the side here for academic reasons. I came back as an instructor, adjunct instructor.
So you showed them?
I showed them, yeah. So I had a little respect for Valley, and if you can kind of disqualify me academically, I'll come back and be an instructor. So I came from the low end to the high end here as far as being an instructor there.
Yeah.
And so I've been adjunct instructor at Valley for about 15 years.
When did you retire?
I retired in '05,
Uh-huh.
and I still teach at the
community
Valley.
college?
And I also train foster and adoptive parents. They need so many hours to maintain their license. So that it's independent of the county. There's a different division at Valley College. So I train about maybe 10 trainings a
So you're still
year.
pretty busy then?
Still
Still
busy,
pretty busy,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Well, Charlie, we're kind of coming to our end of our
Sure.
interview. We spent almost an hour together. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you would like to add to our conversation? I see that you have
Oh.
some pictures.
Yeah, just kind of some loose ends.
Okay.
In for the record, in 1949, we had a snowstorm that hit South Colton.
Okay.
And that's me in this little photograph just to save, and 8th Street is kind of right behind me. We can look at that later.
Uh-huh.
And then things that people kind of don't know about me. Because I was always in the store running around, and I was always kind of quiet, but a lot of energy. I was, from about age 3 to 4, maybe even 5, I was the ring boy in about 4 or 5 weddings. And here I am with a military wedding, and they outfitted me in an Air Force uniform, as you can see it. And to connect with this,
No, you were a ring boy.
I was a ring boy, yeah.
For how many weddings?
From 4 or 5, yeah.
Is it because they tried to butter up your grandfather?
Yeah, but, yeah, buy more groceries. And so I could just, stand there, don't say anything, okay. So, so I was good at that. And then some years back, I think about 15 years or so ago, it took 3 phone calls to get in touch with me that one of the weddings I'd been in, I think it was this one when I was in a military uniform, they were having a 50th wedding anniversary. And they wanted to know if I would attend, and it was going to be in Colton at the Colton VFW Hall. So I said, sure, I'll be there. After 50 years, you found me, wow.
Were you a ring boy?
I was a ring boy at their wedding. So they had a professional photographer, and they took a photo of the people that still survived.
That'd be dark.
And as you can see, I'm the tallest one there. And as we were lining up for this photo, I said, last time, wasn't I the short one? Because I was about 4 or 5 years old. But that certainly is something that I think very few people know about me, being a ring boy.
You have a couple of other pictures there.
Here's a photo of my mother, and kind of her registration card.
Uh-huh.
She was born in Mexico. And then here's my my
Your
grandmother.
mother's name was Mary, right?
With Mary, yeah, and that's my grandmother, my father's mother, and of course my picture of Uncle Ralph, and and then real short. So I'm in the Navy, and I've gone to Aquinas in San Bernardino. There was a family in South Colton by the name of De La Rosa. Probably there's a lot of families, and I'm on the Navy ship with 4,000 people.
David.
I think there's a David, yeah.
David.
And I'm on the ship with 4,000 guys. And my division, there's a lot of divisions, my division has about 100 guys. So 4,000 on the ship, my work crew is about 100. Who reports on the ship but a guy from Colton, Sal de la Rosa. And I never knew him because I was going to this school and he was going to this high school. And here we met, and here's a photo of us on the ship. And that's Sal right there. And we have become obviously kind of best of friends. We went overseas together one year. He got out about a year or so before I did. But of all the surprises in life, two guys from South Colton, a ship with 4,000 guys, a division with 100 guys, and he ends up doing the same job I did.
And he's about 2 or 3 blocks away from your store.
Yes, yes.
His family 2 or 3 blocks west of your store.
Yeah, west, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just amazing. Just
Yeah.
amazing what life sometimes throws out at you.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Like people say, it's a small world.
Yeah,
It's
it
small
certainly,
world.
it certainly
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Well, Charlie, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
It has been such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Truly appreciate it. Not only your time, but also the information that you provided, not only about your family, but in particular about your grandfather.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.